Welcome to another episode of Expected Buffalo, the podcast. Brought to you, of course, by One Pie Pizza on Seneca Street in West Seneca, open daily from 9 to 8. I haven't talked it up in a while, but breakfast pizza, man. Like, I kind of got into. I was never a breakfast pizza kind of guy, but I've gotten into it recently. But One Pie Pizza, that's the place to go find breakfast pizza. Open early, highly recommend. And thank you again to them for being our official sponsor of the podcast. So we are back after 4 days in Texas, a little sunburn, a little steak cooking, a little rib cooking. Great experience, I got to tell you. I mean, some of the people, I had the pleasure of meeting there from all over the world. It was great. My hope was to unplug from hockey, but of course you never do. So I kept tracks on the few games that occurred while I was away. So, nice wins in those ones to keep everything going here, especially Vegas. That was a nice, fun game that kind of twisted with the Jack Eichel stuff there once again. But we're back. Got to enjoy the Boston game yesterday from the comfort of my own home and kind of get back into things yesterday and then today. And here we are again, back talking with you lovely people about this team and a team that, I guess if you take out the Detroit game, is showing some life here over the last few games, showing signs of improvement, showing signs of being a more difficult team to play against in some regards, standing up for each other, maybe a little bit better vibes, if you will. Positive stuff, I guess, here and there. It is not clean, it is not perfect by any means. There are still issues and shortcomings and deficiencies in certain areas of this team, without a doubt. But I guess it's good for those of you out there who want to see, the improvement over these last, I don't know, what we at now, 17, 18 games. You're getting that for those of you that want them to lose more than they win, to have a draft position. Things are really not going your way right now. So I apologize for those people out there. But I'm in the spot now where I think it's, I don't think they're going to be a bottom 5 team. So in that regard, I think, we'll just kind of hopefully see some improvement, see some things look a little bit different. Hopefully get some players back in the lineup. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. But yeah, see how things gel and come together with some new guys. Maybe we'll see Bernard Docker make his debut finally on Thursday in Utah. That'll be interesting to watch. And then, as I was saying, and I guess that's where we can kick things off here, is the injury situation with 2 players in particular we're going through that with. Well, 3 now, but the 2, we're kind of up in the air on our JJ Peterka and Josh Norris. So Peterka, it sounds like it's a possibility he could play on Thursday, so that'd be good to get him back with his injury. Didn't seem like it was anything too significant. And then when it comes to Norris, I don't think that's going to be anything too long either, from the way it sounds, and not related to his shoulder. So that's some good news there. Hopefully a couple of games off, for a week or so off, he'll feel a little bit better. There was definitely seemed like there was some hesitancy in his game at times, so that injury could have been impacting that. So, getting back in the lineup, spread out your lineup again. They started to do that a little bit before he got injured, and hopefully they do that again. And then Yuri Kulik, we'll see how long he's going to be out here with the head injury, the concussion from that hit that he suffered in the Vegas game. Unfortunate hit, but good response from the team to stand up for him. Hopefully he's not out too long. He can get back in here and, finish strong over the last how many ever games he's able to play. And then I think everybody else beyond that is, relatively healthy, or at least the main guys that you want to see. It's encouraging, and something that I think we talked about last time we did one of these podcasts, is it's encouraging to start to see things come together, if you will. I mean, it's frustrating that it's taken 60 something games for that to happen, but what I mean by that is, the lineup from a forward perspective, especially when they get all healthy, you start to see how it's coming together. You have your scoring lines, then you have your checking lines, and again, it's not completely clean, completely perfect. There's some players in the team that are holding you back or not playing as well, for sure. But still, you could see the vision, I guess you could say. You could see how it starts to come together, how it starts to piece together if guys perform the level they're supposed to perform at, if everybody could stay healthy, if everybody could fit into the role supposed to fit into. Uh, and that gives you some hope going into the offseason. That gives you some belief that it's you fix a few things, you tweak a few things here or there, and then everything hopefully this time, will fall into place for you. And really where I want to get into it and really give some credit is to two players in particular, but one, we'll start with the guy that I wrote about today, and that being Ryan McLeod. He's really been everything and more that the Sabres could have hoped for this year. When they acquired him in the offseason, he was their big move because we didn't think it was at the time, but nothing else came beyond that. So he was the big acquisition that they got in the summer, and it's really paid off this year in almost every facet they've asked him to play. His offensive numbers are better than I anticipated. He's putting up career numbers from a raw production standpoint: goals, assists, points. His defensive numbers are good. They're using him more as a matchup center, and that is going extremely well for him, particularly his last few games. And then it's everything around that where you kind of knew what you had, but maybe not to the degree that you see it now. We know about his speed, and we know about the way he can rush up the ice with the puck. We knew that when they acquired him, but now seeing that play out, seeing not only how he can be a puck carrier, but also he can be a distributor off of that. So his primary assists are up, because of that ability that I guess I underrated or didn't think that he really had in his game. And we're seeing that unfold here. We saw it with the own power goal. We saw it with the tuck goal against Edmonton. He really has stood out in that regard. And I think that is what makes it more impressive because everything else that you're getting is what you anticipated. While it is better than I expected, from a defensive standpoint, being literally graded out as one of the best exit forwards in the league in all three zones data, is better than I anticipated him, performing this season or what they were getting. And that's good. That's a feather in the cap of Kevin Adams. There was some criticism at the time that trade was made. I was on board with that. I thought it made sense for what they needed, what they wanted to do. But, there was, of course, some overreaction criticism too, but that is what it is, and that happens from time to time. And really, we're not going to know what the Edmonton side of things are until Savoy gets in there and he plays some more games and develops further. He really hasn't seen too much NHL time this year. They called on, played a few games, and went back down to the AHL. So we'll see really from an Edmonton standpoint where that goes. But McLeod himself, he's been that perfect middle six center for them. He's gone up and down between that second and third line role for the majority of the season. Of course, injuries I think have required him to jump up the lineup a little bit, from what they expect him to be more of a third line center. But he's done it when he's been asked to do it. He's stepped up and has been efficient playing in that role. I think it's unfair at times to ask him to do that because while his offensive game has been better this year, that's just he's not a proficient offensive guy in the sense of, being a 50 to 60 second line center, for you. But really, I think from, if you can get a 40 to 50 guy as your third line center moving forward and be your two-way matchup guy, I think that's great for a guy who's 25 years old, really going into the prime of his career. They're going to have a contract, workout in the summer. Obviously, he's a restricted free agent, so they'll have to figure that out. I would, of course, go long term on that. Again, he has to want to do that and has to work out from a numbers perspective. But I wasn't having any hesitancy for him going that long term route, locking him in as your middle six center, your third line center, ideally in a perfect world, moving forward on this team, that you can utilize him in so many roles. And then you've seen this year that if you have an injury, he can step up for you a couple games. He can be a second line center, move up your lineup for you, and not really lose that much of a step while doing that. So I wanted to give McLeod his flowers. It's and it goes back to what I was saying, that if you see the long-term vision moving forward, if you can get Tage back to playing that center again, where he's been the last few games with Norris out, and he's looked fine doing that. If you can get him back to being that, you can have Norris slot in as your second, and then you have your matchup center McLeod, and then you work Kulik in there where you need to, and your center spine is established. You could always move Tage back to the wing and then put Kulik back up there at center, and then have your Kulik, Norris, and McLeod group, and then Krebs is still around too. Krebs is another one. Maybe I'll get to in a second. That I think is kicked around at times, but I think it's performing at a pretty good level this year. But we'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, McLeod. There's definitely some things you have to watch for when you're talking about a contract. You're thinking about the future. He's probably not going to shoot at 18-19%. Again, but still, he's a plus finisher, and that should be considered. So maybe the numbers come down a little bit next year from a production standpoint, from a goal scoring standpoint. But I think if he's given that right opportunity on the third line with some offensive players around him, and we've seen some of the playmaking this year, that at least from a points aspect and even an offensive, just raw impact standpoint, from a raw impact standpoint, I think you're going to get a pretty decent player that they should have no scaries or worries about extending. And I think moving Cousins is only going to make him more impactful, because we've seen for a couple of years now, a couple of coaches now, for some reason, they've tried to make Cousins, that matchup centerman, that guy they put against the other team's top center, and it really hasn't worked at any point. And his defensive game was never where coaches or people really thought it was. Now that he's gone and off this team, that puts McLeod in that aspect, and we've seen the last few games it's been successful, and the team, as a result, has played better and has performed better because of maybe that little switch there, and that change in the lineup, forcing a change in approach from the coach. And we'll see how that keeps going here. Well, hopefully over these last stretch of the season, that continues, and that gives them that faith and that belief moving forward, that they have this guy in place, and then they can rely upon that going into next season. So I guess I'll move next to Peyton Krebs, since I just brought him up. So he's a guy that I didn't want to spend a lot of time on here, and I don't want to get into a whole thing like it was last year, where the doesn't have the opportunity to play up the lineup and the points thing and all of that. And I'm not looking to get into that conversation by any means. I think what we have to understand here is we have a player that fits into a different role on this team than what was anticipated when he was acquired. So when they got him as part of the Eichel trade coming over from Vegas, the expectation is he was going to be a top six forward. He had the playmaking and the offensive upside, and that was what you thought you were getting. Fast forward a couple of years, that's not what you're getting. And I think because you're not getting that people see him as a disappointment. And I know there's some people who will say that he was the centerpiece of that trade, so he should, be more than he is right now. My point in contention on that is Tuck, I believe, was the center point of the trade. If we're, but we're haggling semantics here. It's regardless. So on one hand, I get it. There's the frustration that you're not getting what you expected. That he's not performing at that high offensive level. He's not, living up to that draft type, if you will, when he was selected and where he was selected. But still, I think that we have to understand the role that he is playing in, and that they're asking him to do, has gone well this season. He is a fine fourth line center that can get in the forecheck, can be physical, can be an agitator, can play well defensively, and step in here and there offensively if he needs to. He can step on the power play at times if he needs to. We're never going to get this guy who's going to be this 40, 50 point player. That's just, we're not going to get it. We're not. And I think the sooner that we can accept that and embrace the role that he is in will make you feel better about the player. Really, there's not many people on this team, whether they are having a good game or a bad game, um, that consistently gives the effort that Peyton Krebs does. You can tell by watching him that he cares about this team being successful. He cares about this team, and he cares about leaving it all on the ice. And with some people, that only goes so far, and for me too, that has its limitations as well. It's great if you're putting in an excellent effort. I can appreciate that, but at the same time, that has to come with performance too, in particular the role that you're asked to play. In this regard, he's asked to play a non-scoring role as a energy center, and he's doing that. He's fulfilling what he's being asked to do. And I think that it's good, at least moving into next. He has one more year on his contract, that you kind of have that in place. You have a guy who's going to do those things for you. And I would urge people to, I guess, reshift their focus there, because it's never going to be what you expected, even what I expected when they acquired him. It's never going to be there. But if we accept that he can find a spot on this team, what he's being asked to do, then that's good. And that's, I guess, all we can hope for at this point. I'm not saying this is going to be a guy that's going to be here for the next 15 years. Or that he should be here for the next 15 years or 10 years, whatever, playing in that role. But I think for at least the next few, that he can help this team. He can help this team, be a bottom six forward and make the other team's night difficult at times, because that's basically what he's here to do at this point. And of course, still pop in some offense. It's 25 to 30 points would be great. That might be difficult to get at times in some seasons, but I think you can get that. Then that's an A quality production season from what you're going to get at Krebs, the way things are trending at this point in his career. The last guy I want to talk about on a similar aspect, that has some really interesting conversations around him at times, and that's Zach Benson. So really, we're kind of focusing on the bottom six of our lineup here tonight. But Benson is another one that, there's some conversation and debate out there about him maybe needing the AHL, which, he still can't go to, but, that he would be better there and he's over his head at the NHL level. And I just completely disagree. I think, we have a player here from a number standpoint, defensively, is insane impact numbers defensively for a 19-year-old player. And that is very encouraging moving forward, because I think learning the defensive side of the game is one of the more difficult things to do at a young age, whether you're a forward or whether you're a defenseman. And this kid, the second he enters the league, has it. He understands it. His hockey IQ is at a high level. When there's not a lot of guys in this team at times that make you think that their hockey IQ is at a high level. Well, Benson's is. And there are some deficiencies. His height, his skating isn't the best at times. But because he sees the game so well, because he has that anticipation, it allows him to be successful. Sort of in the way, before I say this player, he's not going to be this player, but in the way that Sam Reinhart was. Didn't have the biggest size, wasn't the best skater, but because he saw the ice so well, because he has that elite level anticipation, he was able to overcome those things and be an impactful player and be a productive player. Benson is never going to have the offensive upside of Sam Reinhart. Absolutely not. Just, I don't see it. As much as I love the player, I don't think we're ever going to get that out of him. But still, if you can get a guy who can maintain this defensive level that he's showing right now, the determination on the walls, the puck battles, and there's really nobody on this team that consistently gets the puck to the middle of the ice like he does, passing more than shooting, but gets the puck to those danger areas like Benson does. You add that all in, and then on top of it, say, well, I have a 19-year-old here that can do 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 being the offensive side of things. is going to come. It's going to develop over the next year or two into a little bit more than we're getting right now. What does that mean necessarily? I don't know if he's ever going to be a prominent scorer. I don't know if his shot is going to improve enough for him to do that. I think he goes to the net and he's going to be around the net where he can be a 15 to 20 goal guy for you, maybe a little bit more some, really good years. Maybe gets to 22, 23. But I think he's going to be around the 20s or slightly underneath the goal guy every single year. I think he's going to be a playmaker at times. The team does not have a lot of those right now, and I think he has that potential for how he gets the puck to where he gets it and the way he distributes it pretty well. I think that potential is there. So maybe, you're looking at a 15-30 guy that keeps it, as a 45 to 50 point player, which is excellent for the way his defensive upside is. Really what I see him long term is that guy that can be in the middle six of your lineup maybe most nights, but also a player that you can play on your first line and be effective for you. He's not your traditional prototype scoring winger. But what he will do for you is he will play up the lineup because he still has that offensive upside in his game, but also more importantly, he has that two-way aspect. So let's just say you play him with JJ Peterka and you play him with Tage, two not of the best defensive players, on the team by any means, but you throw Benson up there and then that improves your game defensively and it makes your line more whole. It makes you be able to put them in situations that are not just offensive friendly and it makes you not worry maybe later in games defending leads because you have him on the ice, or maybe it's a situation that he plays in the bottom six of your lineup or he's a third line winger. And then in those late situations when you're holding a lead, he can move up your lineup to help your team defensively hold on to a lead or be more, make it more sound if you're going to shorten your bench and roll your, two or three lines. That you can lean on him in that regard to move up and down your lineup, give you some versatility. So really, I think that there's truly the ability, and I don't want to say the word special because that can maybe get people to believe he's something more than he can be. But I think to be a dynamic, I think versatile is the best way to put it, player moving forward that you can use in a variety of ways and makes your lineup deeper and makes your team deeper. And for him to be doing what he's doing at just 19 years old, and I get the production, is maybe isn't more people want to see it, which I think it's fine for his age, but whatever. Still, the other things that he's doing and playing at this level, at this age, should be appreciated. And I think any notion of him needing AHL time is crazy. He has shown he's an NHL player. He earned that NHL spot. And there's really never been any point where, at least for an extended period, where you didn't think he belongs in this league. And I get it. It's difficult in the day-to-day nuances of this team where there's not a lot of winning, that frustration builds. And for what he does right now, it's hard to see at times what he does for this team. Because some of the things he does don't show up on the score sheet. Not flashy. But it's just those few 3-4 plays a game where you're like, there it is. That's why he's so important. See that play right there? That's why. The way he made that exit, the way he made that back check, the way he got the puck from behind the net to the front of the net, the way he made that pass from the wall to the middle of the net, found that guy, made that quick pass, saw the open ice. It's those little things that you have to latch onto now that will become more consistent, and you'll start to see it more as he develops here with his age and moves along throughout his career. So McLeod, Krebs, Benson, those are my three guys. Those are the three guys this week that, I wanted to key in on, and for different reasons. Whether, that I think that we should appreciate what they're giving us. McLeod, I think everybody can see it, so I don't really need to go with that. But I think the other two, being Krebs and Benson, I want to give them their credit. For a lot of other struggles the players have had in this team, I think those two, have done what is being asked for them. Again, it's role, right? And they're being impactful players within that role, and that can only help this team moving forward. All right, the last thing that I wanted to get into, which I think in the year 2025 is crazy that we still have to have this conversation, but I'm seeing it more pop up here. In the evaluation of this team, what's wrong? Why are they not where they need to be? What are the reasons for it? Particularly when we're talking about the front office. And I'm not really, to be clear, I'm not referencing anybody specifically. I couldn't even name somebody specific if I wanted to. But I've seen it come up in conversations. I've seen it in articles. I've seen it in social media posts at times, and that's the I don't know, is it a debate, but I think it's the analytics question again. There seems to be this growing conversation, growing vibe, I guess, if you will, about the analytics team in the Sabres front office, carrying, I don't know how to put this, I get maybe having too much say, having too much power, driving too many of the decisions, and being maybe more responsible than others. But I mean, if that's completely right. But anyways, driving more of the failure because of their recommendations, because of what their player inputs, if you will. And look, I think there's a few things here. We're not living in 2013, 2012, whatever anymore. The stat boys and girls won the war. They won the war. Every single team in the NHL, every single team has an extensive, 3+, most likely, most cases, analytics team, a data team. AHL teams have them. Junior teams have them. College teams have them. It's prevalent in all sports. Now, I don't know. Some people say that some analytics, like baseball and football and whatever, it's not. It's semantics. Everybody does it. Everybody uses it. Everybody utilizes that information. And look, I am a person who lives in numbers, not only in what I do here for this hockey stuff, but also in my day job too. I think any advocating or belief that having more information to make a decision is bad or not good is just the wrong process. When making decisions, and we'll go back to sports here, hockey in particular, when making decisions on player evaluations, when making decisions on who you're going to draft, who you're going to trade for, who you're going to target as free agents, you want as much information as possible. You want the analytics part, you want the scouting part, you want the, whatever, the agents, any information you can bring in to help you make a decision is what you want to have at this point. There's no longer a eye test versus analytics. It's not a thing anymore. It's really not. It goes hand in hand. It goes together. I am somebody who runs a website that is data driven by analytics and numbers, and I am sitting here telling you the eye test or watching the game is just as important as having the numbers there with you for a variety of reasons. One, on the watching the game side, you want to have that data to prove, to validate, to invalidate, or question what you're seeing. Why is player X, who I thought played well, who I thought did this, looks bad defensively, let's say, in these numbers? Why? What is the reason behind that? Let me go investigate and find. Flip side, I thought player X had an excellent game, created offense, generated scoring opportunities. Oh, let me see. The numbers back that up. The numbers validate. On the flip side of it, again, I think it's a flip side twice now. From a numbers perspective, being a numbers guy, having the data, you want to make sure that your information backs up when you watch the game. I have a player here who my numbers are telling me that he creates offense consistently. He gets to these areas on the ice. Now let me watch and make sure it's actually what's happening. Let me make sure it's that player driving that number and not his line mate. It goes together. It goes hand in hand. And if somebody is going to sit there and, and tell you that, analytics and numbers are the reason for the struggles and the player mistakes on this team, it is just patently false information. Just not true. And I think if you're going to have that conversation, or if you're going to go down that route, with all due respect to anybody who wants to do that and go down that path, that it is trying to stir up a conversation that died 10 years ago that isn't relevant anymore. And to me, it comes off as not really understanding what the real issues are or how to have a conversation around those issues. You're just blaming what you don't like. It'd be like me sitting here as being more of a numbers heavy person, being like, well, the scouts on this team don't know what they're doing. They're small scouting stuff. Their pro personnel scouts are not going out and getting the right players. The failures this front office has made is owned by everybody. It's owned by the analytics team. It's owned by Kevin Adams. It's owned by the scouts. It's owned by the amateur scouts. It's owned by the pro scouts. It's owned by the owner. Everybody does it. This front office, I can only speak in the Sabres front office, works collaboratively. Okay? There are times that I know that the analytics team did not get their way on a particular player or an idea or something. There's times I know that the scouts did not get their way on a particular player or an idea or whatever. It cuts both ways. There's no reason we should be sitting here and doing a checklist back and forth of this was a scout guy, this was the analytics guy, scout guy, analytics guy, scout guy, analytics. Doesn't matter. Ultimately, it is Kevin Adams' decision to go get the players that they are getting. Everything else, from a scout to an analytics team, are providing data inputs. His responsibility is to take that information and make a decision on who he is going to get. Sam Ventura is not sitting there pulling the trigger on who they're going to go after. His team can make recommendations. His team can say the data likes this guy. The scouts can say, hey, we like this guy. What do the numbers show? We have a collaborative conversation about it. That is how it works, at least on this team. I don't know how other teams do it. I don't know. But that's how it works on this team. And I don't want us to go back as a fan base, as in discussions that we have. And that's why I'm bringing it up, to go back to those times. We don't need to anymore. We do not need to. We can all agree logically you need both. Both sets of information are important to go through and see what is happening in this team, evaluate what is right, what is wrong, what doesn't work, what needs to change moving forward. And that's just the way it is. It's 2025. That's the way society is. That, better or worse, whatever, that's a different conversation, but that's how it is. Information is information, and you should try to get as much of it as you can to make the best informed decisions. Nobody's going to go 100%. The scouts are not going to hit 100%. The analytics team's not going to hit 100%. Everybody misses. If you hit 100% every time, then you would be the greatest GM that ever existed. Your teams would win the championship every single year. It just doesn't go that way. It is a collective group decision, and the failure of this season, and that is what it is owned by every single person in that front office. And I wish we didn't have to have this conversation. And I've tried to ignore it, but it seems like it's becoming more and more and more and more common. So I'm just throwing out my insight, my thoughts on it, because I don't want to see us go backwards. I don't want to see us be bogged down by these conversations by these discussions, by these debates that were settled years ago. Let's, go through it. Let's have educated conversations, and as fans, have discussions on how we believe this team can improve, and not get bogged down in the details of this and that and eyes and numbers and that. It goes together. You can't just look at one. You need both. You need both. Both are important. End of. I think it's a rant. End of discussion on it. And I don't want to. I don't want to bring it up ever again. Hopefully, and certainly not for a very long time if I have to. So yeah, wanted to get that off my chest, and doing so, I don't know, made my voice scratchy, which is weird. Maybe because I haven't, it's been a long weekend, a long few days in Texas. I almost said the Texas heat, but really it wasn't. There was, I think Saturday it was warmer in Buffalo than it was in Texas, which, not ideal. But that's the way it goes sometimes. Anyways, back to the Sabres. So to wrap things up here, they have a weird road trip. So if I remember correctly, it's Utah, Minnesota, back to Winnipeg. So a lot of, West Coast, Central, back to the West-ish, Central, maybe so Canada, kind of. But definitely a weird trajectory here in their travels over the next few games as they wrap up, a Midwest/Western road trip. I guess maybe more Midwest is the way to put it. Over the next few days here, and then we get back. They're back home and all of that good stuff as we roll through the end of the season, and the playoff races are heating up. So that's fun to get into beyond just the Sabres. Some close standings points in both the West and the Eastern Conference that we can follow and see how things shake out there. But I think that's it for tonight. I will be back. We're going to get a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to be 3 days in a row here. 3 days. So you got tonight. We'll get it tomorrow again. And then we'll get back into a mailbag Thursday. Probably an earlier episode on Thursday because the game starts at 9 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, out in Utah. The Sabres' first visit out to Utah. So it's a 9 o'clock start on Thursday. So maybe we'll get a mailbag Thursday start time of 8 o'clock because there are questions that I do want to answer and get into. So we'll do that. We'll aim for 8 o'clock on Thursday and then your usual 9 o'clock start time tomorrow. All right. Everybody have a good night. If you're in Buffalo, enjoy the warm weather tomorrow that we seem to be getting because that's pretty awesome as we're getting into warm weather season, or at least we're creeping a little bit closer to it. I know it's supposed to get colder again this weekend, but those few days of warm, spots, enjoy those as we wind down here in this season. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll see you later.